All right, guys, day 2, shared reading. I'm looking at Joseph Plumb Martin, page 452. I'm going to zoom in so that way I can see my text. Now we are in the year 1775, so we do have some pretty outdated language. So as we're reading, let's keep in mind that we are looking at English from hundreds of years ago, so it might not make sense to you, but we can make sense of it. I have my notebook paper in front of me with my character traits list of Joseph Plumb Martin. I am writing in a different color pen today so that way you can see the difference between my work from yesterday and my work today. Putting today's date on that column so that way I know where it came from. All right. I see that it's in quotes, so I know that this is going to be a person speaking. Thinks I to myself, I will not be laughed at into it or out of it. I will act my own pleasure of after all. So right now, I will not be laughed into it or out of it. So I think that Joseph is unable to be pressured. So just because someone says, do it, do it, do it, or don't do it, he says, I can make my own decisions. So I'm trying to think, what would that make a character trait of? So I'm going to put down a bullet point. I'm going to write down, can't be pressured. And I'll come back with a whole word for that. So seating myself at the table, enlisting orders were immediately presented to me. We know that orders are the directions given to soldiers, and listing directions were immediately presented to me. I took up the pen, loaded it with the fatal charge, and made several mimic imitations of writing my name. So they're saying that he took the pen, he loaded it with fatal charge, so he dipped it in the ink and made several mimic. We know that mimic means to copy, so several copies of his name. So it looks like he's signing the orders, basically saying, I will do these things, but took special care not to touch the paper with the pen until an unlucky friend who was leaning over my shoulder gave my hand a strike which caused the pen to make a woeful scratch on the paper. Oh, he has enlisted, said he. Well, thought I may as well go through with the business now as not. So, wow, so he was reading over the papers and then someone hit his hand which caused there to be ink on the paper, which basically means he is now becoming a soldier. A 14-year-old soldier, wow. So I wrote my name fairly upon the indentures. Ooh, we know the word indentures, that means a contract. So I wrote my name fairly upon the contract, and now I was a soldier, in name at least. His grandparents were unhappy, but they fit him out with clothing, a musket, and powder. His grandmother gave him cheese and cake. I wish she gave him cheesecake. And stuffed it into his knapsack. He sailed to New York City to join a Connecticut company. For more than a month, all they did was march in parades and practice battle drills. Now I'm wondering, are these parades being used for celebrating? Or are they being used to throw a big party? I don't think so. For more than a month, all they did was march in parades and practice battle drills. So I'm assuming that they're talking about parades, meaning like a group of people walking together. Joseph's biggest problem was getting used to the food, salt pork or boiled beef, hard bread, and turnips or boiled potatoes. Ugh, turnips, gross. So right now, I did not notice any new character traits. I did not notice any new details about Joseph Plumb Martin except that he is now a soldier. So I'm going to put here another bullet point and write down soldier in American army. Okay. And I'm using soldier as it's written here to make sure I'm spelling it correctly on my notes. Move over to the next page. Let's see what this picture is. I see people talking. Looks like someone here is signing something. Young boys. Oh, maybe this is where they're going to enlist. A young man summons his courage and signs the enlistment roster that will make him a soldier in the Continental Army. So that word summons means to gather. So a young man gathers his courage and signs the enlistment roster to make him a soldier in the Continental Army. And right now, I'm actually going to strike the word American and change it to Continental in my notes, in the Continental Army. So during this time period in 1775, there were not the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard. There were not different branches of military. It was simply the Army. And so here they're calling it the Continental Army. But even as they practiced, hundreds of British warships were arriving at nearby Staten Island, unloading 3,200 red-coated soldiers. Late in August, Joseph's company was ordered to Long Island to stop British forces from taking New York City. So red-coated soldiers, that is also going to be known as the British soldiers. Just before they marched off, Joseph climbed onto the roof of a house and squinted in the direction of the battlefield. I distinctly saw the smoke of the field artillery, but the distance and the unfavorableness of the wind prevented my hearing their report, at least, but faintly. The horrors of battle then presented themselves to my mind and all of their hideousness. I must come to it now, thought I. Wow, I have no idea what that all meant, but I see that it's in quotes. Now, if I go back to my previous pages when it tells me who Joseph Plumb Martin is this actually Joseph Plumb Martin speaking? I don't think so. I think it's Joseph Plumb Martin writing, because it says that he was going to be a writer during this time period. So I distinctly saw the smoke of the field artillery. So he saw smoke, but the distance and the unfavorableness of the wind prevented me from hearing. So he saw the smoke, but because it was so far away and the wind was blowing so much, he was unable to hear. The horrors of the battlefield presented themselves in my mind in all their hideousness. So let's think, what would be something horror related to a battlefield? I'm thinking about bodies being on the battlefield. I'm thinking about there being lots of destruction, lots of maybe like smoke. I'm thinking about movies that I've seen with battles. I must come to it now, I thought. All right, so right now, I have a character trait for Joseph. I can say that he is observant because he's observing what's happening and he's notating it in his journal. Scroll down. I need to zoom out so that way I can go to my next page.